welcome to the Gambling Files podcast. I'm one of your hosts, John Bruford, joined by your other host, Fintan Costello. Hello, Fintan.
You okay, John?
Yeah.
You're just acting like a daytime TV presenter or something.
No, I'm just, well, although all that talk of Justin Fletcher the other week with David Williams, you know.
Yeah.
No, I'm just trying to present a sunnier side of myself. It's something that being on dating apps has taught me, that being my usual morose, sarcastic self is apparently not as appealing as I thought.
Oh, that's... Who knew?
So I'm basically now selling a lie in order to ensnare unsuspecting ladies with my sunny disposition.
Jesus Christ.
It's funny though, like when I see people,
You're a honey trap. You're a what is there?
I'm the world's shittest honey trap. When I'd see people, like when I first lost loads of weight, and I'd see people and they'd just be like, "Holy shit, you know, you're looking really well." And I'd always say the same thing. I would say, "Yeah, but I'm still the same person inside." So, I mean, it's not all that.
Oh.
Yeah. So I'm only good for, you know, a couple of dates probably before the real me comes out. So I just thought I'd give that a practice, and it went okay, I think.
I wouldn't call that. It was very sinister. It didn't work. I wouldn't use it.
Okay.
Don't do it, John.
Well, that's me shit out of ideas then. Hey, but I did have one thought though.
Go on.
In fact, I wrote a column about this for IGB, if I remember correctly.
Ooh.
I was reading this article about this is such a fucking shit thing. People using LinkedIn like a dating app, and like,
oh no.
But apparently a lot of people proposition other people on there. I mean, I don't know about you. I don't know. Proposition.
Is it like a lot of people proposition? Is it like a lot of blokes proposition women on there? Is that the actual?
Or they'll talk to them about a position they really need to discuss with them over drinks or some shit like that, right? But the big problem with that is, right, if you say that on some shitty dating app, you are having a conversation with somebody who is open to dating. And that's not really the permission that's granted. I mean, there's a social contract in these things. And the social contract that you're agreeing to when you're partaking in being on LinkedIn is talking to other people with common business interests or discussing business shit. I mean, that I am a believer that people should talk about themselves as people on LinkedIn. That it should be not necessarily like Facebook, but that people should talk about their lives because it's a personality-driven industry.
I'm gonna let me build on that. I think, you know, if you think of your LinkedIn profile, you got your LinkedIn profile, you've got your basically your CV, right? So you got like your background, all the different, right?
Have you seen my profile on LinkedIn?
Some more extensive than others. Right. So you have to treat LinkedIn like you're representing, like you're self-employed, like you're representing your business. So the way I categorize it is this something I would talk about in an office? Or is this something that, like, if there was a HR department, they'd be okay with? So I think there's a borderline, like, of getting, and I think because LinkedIn's become more popular, it's definitely like the type of content's changed dramatically over the last few years, and there's a lot more clickbait and stuff as well now. But it reminds me of my favorite Twitter account, which is at Racing Creeps, and it's a horse racing focused Twitter account. Wait for this. And what they do is there's obviously a lot of women in the horse racing industry. And they put out a tweet about, I don't know, doing something at the stables, or they're a TV presenter, or about to go on air, or whatever. Something like completely innocuous and just not just a woman posting on Twitter who happens to be in the horse racing industry or related. And then what they do is they find like the creepiest reply to her tweet, and they highlight that, but then it's hard to, you have to go check out the Twitter account, but they zoom in to like the headshot of whoever made it, and then they zoom in again. And it's just this, I find it hilarious because it's always the weird blokes on the internet passing these comments. And it's horrific that it happens, but it's also, I find the account incredibly funny too. I don't know if that's, should I find it funny? Am I mental?
It just exists to amuse you, Fintan. The degradation
well,
of others.
No, not like that, but the weirdos.
I bet you're sitting there going, "Ha ha! Yes, she deserved that." I bet that's
no, not like that. No. It's the blokes I'm laughing at for being creeps. The racing creeps, basically.
But listen, right? My theory is, I don't use LinkedIn that way. As far as I'm aware, I don't believe I have used LinkedIn that way.
Good.
Now, but what I think is that trade expos could be a step further. So maybe I should treat ICE.
No, stop that. Whatever that train of thought is, stop. No, John.
Well, I didn't even get to the spearmint rhino part.
Half the industry would be there that week, but no.
Okay, I remember when you used to be fun. Oh no, hang on. No, I don't.
No, I've always been boring.
Although it's worth pointing out that you are wearing some branded merchandise in your hat, and you've got an Innovate t-shirt. Innovate make terrific trail running shoes, whereas my branded merchandise is Cobra Kai. Bite like an eagle. And in that fantastic episode, somebody said, eagles don't bite. This one does.
Do you have any of the merch to hand? Mine hasn't arrived yet.
Funny you should say that, Fintan. I've got a box of it right here.
Ooh.
And I'll be bringing it to ICE. It's in a slightly tricky to open box, though. I might have broken that box. But it's worth it. Now,
what have we got?
Say, for example, you were somebody who was fed up of having to drink tea from their cupped hands. Like, what's the solution? Well, this.
Look at that.
This is the solution.
Let the world know.
No more burnt hands. Not for you. Just be
works for
in the
tea,
lap of luxury.
coffee, wine, gin.
You could probably
beer,
put squash in it
if you needed to, or casual day drinking, whatever works.
Oh yeah, that's a good idea. It'd be good camouflage. Not that I ever needed.
We need to put a lid on it or something for that kind of the day drinking.
Oh yeah. But also, Fintan, for people who, for example, have something that is unadorned, but they'd like it to be adorned.
Oh, we've done it.
Oh, doesn't that go well with my t-shirt? So, right, hang on. That's you, and that's me. So, Gambling Files laptop sticker. There is a logo one as well, but I can't remember what envelope that's in. Just bear with me a second.
Is it the other envelope?
Sweet. No, because these came in like 4. These did. Oh, there it is. And these, I like the simplicity of these. These are well, simple.
We've got a 6-minute warning, so I think we need to move on.
Might put that on my ICE name badge. Well, this episode that we've convened to discuss here today, Fintan, is with the magnificent friend of the podcast, returning guest, former podcast sponsor, corporate overlord. Did I miss anything out? Mr. Paul
All-round good
Sculpher.
guy.
Well, yeah, it's a good call. And also the first person to have used one of these in the wild.
I know, he sent us a picture. He sent us a picture.
He did.
So yes, we've got Paul on this week. Paul is a casino consultant. He does a ton of work in the UK and all around the world. And he's also a part of the GRS Gaming Recruitment Solutions. And we wanted to get Paul on. It's January, it's New Year's resolutions time, it's the time when people get headcount approval and need to start hiring. It's people, they've had a couple of weeks off over Christmas and they're questioning life and they maybe start thinking about new jobs and new careers and stuff. So we do a big kind of career recruitment type from both perspectives with Paul, which was super, super interesting. Obviously, I'm fishing for information as part of my sabbatical, so that comes across really obviously. I really didn't. Yeah, it wasn't subtle. But thanks to Paul for being patient with me as he coaches. Basically, it's a life coaching session for Fintan. It's kind of how I describe the episode. So that's really good. Paul's always really good fun, and he's just he's a great guy. We should also thank, apart from our lovely sponsors at Clarion, who are running ICE 2024. We're about a week out from that, so definitely start planning, download the app, do all your bits and pieces there. We should also like to thank Optimove. Optimove are the other one of our sponsors. They are player personalization. We've done some demos. It's really cool software. You can run your entire CRM off this. It's brilliant. The industry thinks so as well. Their stat is 56% of the EGR Power 50. So 56% of the top 50 gambling companies in the world use Optimove. So definitely check them out. They're going to be at ICE, of course. They've got a stand N5/110. So N5/110.
I think they're right by the entrance to N5.
Swing past, get the demo of the CRM solution software. It's going to change your life. Mention the podcast, and you also get an Amazon voucher. Not that you need a bribe. Go get the demo. It's worth your time and effort.
It genuinely is. We're not prone to hyperbole and bullshit on this podcast. It's an amazing piece of software. It's breathtakingly good.
I could take over the world with it. It's brilliant. I wish I had it years ago. I'd have taken over the world. I wouldn't be here doing this.
Just very fair. Very, very fair.
I'd have better options. So yeah, definitely check them out. They're a great bunch. Really good fun. And that's everything. So on to Paul, and enjoy the show.
Peace out. And remember, stay metal. Hello and welcome to this week's first episode, because we've got more than one episode this week, I reckon. This is the Gambling Files podcast, although you know that because the intro that we haven't recorded yet will come before this. I'm one of your hosts, John Bruford, and I'm joined by your other host, Fintan Costello. Actually, that's also in the intro. The part that I really need to tell you is that we're joined by Paul Sculpher of Gaming Recruitment Solutions, who wants to talk about some stuff and some things. Oh, man. And look, we've just started recording, and the fucking dog wants to go out. So, Paul, say hi.
So I'll step in here while John walks his dog. And what's beautiful now is we're recording video for the first time. So Paul's our guinea pig for this. You'll actually see John has just physically left and not muted his microphone. We're on this. So Paul, it's start of 2024. It's January. It's one of the peak.
Go 2024.
People have had a couple of weeks off over Christmas. A bit of a sleep in. casual day drinking, quite a lot of cheese. They've reset a little bit. They've kind of caught up. They start to think about futures, New Year's resolutions. And one of the big things that crops up is like, am I happy in my job, career aspirations, these kind of things. So that's kind of on the employee's perspective. And then from the recruiters, like the hiring company's perspective, it's typically, this is one of the times of the year, I believe, and I think you told me this, where, they've now got their head count and they need to get cracking and start hiring and stuff like that. So I thought it'd be a great opportunity to kind of bring you in, pick your brains. And obviously I'm on a sabbatical as well, so there's no hidden agenda here at all, Paul. We'll work that into the conversation in a bit. And I thought it'd be just a good opportunity to kind of get recruitment expert in for the gaming industry to kind of, I don't know, what should people be doing? What should hiring companies be doing? What should people maybe think about career changes be doing? And also, all of those kind of wonderful things.
Also, though,
go on.
Do you have any New Year's resolutions yourself?
Oh, that's a good one. That is a good one.
Well, touching on the last point first, I don't tend to do New Year's resolutions, although my wife and I have generally had a go at dry January, which ended last night, in fact.
More of a moist January then.
Almost halfway.
Dry 10. Yeah, I was pretty pleased with that.
Damp.
But she'd been away for a few days, got back, and the call of the pub was just irresistible. So pub, steak, and so on. So nice. Yeah. Other than that, I mean, on the recruitment point, it's amazing actually how sleepy the business has been for the first week. The first week back from I guess the second through to the end of that week, just nothing happened. We were ready to go, Steve and I and Christine out in Malta. We had a fair few roles that we're still working on from last year, but just no one talked to us. No one was answering emails. No one was taking phone calls on the client side. Things have livened up this week, thankfully, last week and this week. So at least we can actually talk to our clients now. They're not all just on extended holidays. But certainly, it does feel like every year it feels like a bunch of people are looking for a change. I mean, as you know, we tend to be, we have companies ask us to fill jobs rather than people find us to find them new jobs. We work that way occasionally with people we know and trust and have placed before, or we know we can figure out where to send them, kind of thing. But generally speaking, it's to find people for jobs rather than jobs for people. But yeah, it's this year's started off pretty well. We're chasing down a couple of big kind of CEO level jobs, which if we get the gig to fill them, that'll be fantastic. Those are the jobs we like. Possibly Fintan.
I
couldn't do Kindred. It's well beyond me. It's well beyond me.
But I hear they're a good perk. Sorry.
Is there a PJ?
Obviously wouldn't comment on individual roles or individual companies, but we're just getting stuck into it, to be honest. As you may remember from I think last time I was on, we never used to do gaming staff. It's all management, somewhere between middle management and exec level. But in the last year or so, we've done a lot more staff. We've been putting them all over Europe, which that's the kind of growth part of the business. It's not something that we do on the same basis. So we don't kind of interview with a management candidate. We'll have a phone chat with them, meet them in person if possible, if it's relevant, if they're close enough, and then we'll assess them and send the best people we can find for the job. For staff, it's more we get a ton of applications in because we've got a pretty strong social media presence, and we'll chop out the ones who either can't do the job, don't have the experience, don't speak the language, don't have the right to work in the relevant country, and send them all off en masse. So we did a job for a major new operator in Europe. We sent them, I think, 630 candidates, and we don't know for certain exactly how many they hired, but that's the kind of, it's much more of a mass approach.
Got it.
It tends to be me who deals with it. So you will get, when we were hiring for that same role, we had 3,300 applications, most of whom were ineligible to work in Europe. So thanks, but we'll stick you on the database for next time. And then all the ones who were eligible we sent off, and then let the client sieve them. We can do that, but it tends to be the clients prefer to do that themselves because they know exactly what they want, and then it's just easier for them to deal.
Got it. So in terms of are you seeing any kind of, if we look at kind of the top end of the market, are you seeing any kind of trends? Is there like anything that kind of stands out compared to previous years, or is it kind of pretty similar as before?
I mean, for us, it's broadly similar. Where we'd love to be is getting involved in the US market for online sports betting and to a certain extent iCasino. Obviously, that's a massive growth area state by state. And I'm sure you read the same newsletters that I do, and the kind of earnings and more guys that you're associated with. I find their stuff absolutely fantastic. They're staying up to speed. Having said that, we haven't really broken into that market in the way that we'd like to, because there's a massive need for those skills. And there's a bit of a talent pool in Europe where obviously we're maybe 10, 15 years ahead. That would be, in terms of trends, that's the place to be. But it tends to be US-based recruiters who get those gigs. In terms of the stuff we're dealing with, there is a bit of a. I mean, it's no secret that offline casinos in the UK are in a bit of trouble. Offline bingo has been in trouble for a long time. We are seeing, not just at a senior level, but also kind of shift management, people looking to get out of those sectors. The offline casinos, the hours are terrible. The prospects don't look all that great. So we've had a number of people come to us from those businesses saying, look, is there anything else we can get into, whether it be outside of the business, outside of betting and gaming, which we can't really help with that well, although we are making some moves in that direction, or whether it's to another sector. Bearing in mind what casino shift managers get paid relative to the minimum wage, it's not fantastic money, and
Sure.
You might as well earn the same kind of money doing something where you don't have to stay up till 6 a.m. dealing with stroppy punters from time to time.
Got it. So there's an easy way to make a hard living.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. And then if we look at the executive side of things, so there's obviously our audience is skews toward that end of the spectrum.
Sure.
And obviously the.
Sorry, Fintan. Just for the
on.
record, you don't need to make any notes in this bit. I'm recording it. All right. I got you.
Thanks, John. I'll play the YouTube video back there. Anyway. So at the top end of the spectrum, obviously the more senior the role, the less of them exist.
Of course.
So it becomes kind of a more rarefied. You've got to wait for somebody to very publicly quit or something like that. And there's been a couple of, like, obviously there's Kindred. There's been a change at Rake Tech. CFO at XL Media.
Yep, so that's
quick. Yep. So there's just picking 3 names off the literally this month kind of thing. It's quite a lot, but it's, if you're a CFO looking for a change or you want to move up to a CFO, there's not many of those available in the gaming space, or as CEOs or these kind of things. So what kind of things for people on the employee side of things, like what kind of things should they be thinking about to put themselves in positions or to make themselves, how do they put their hands up and make themselves known or relevant for these kind of things? What would you recommend? Apart from a podcast, of course.
Yeah. It may not be directly helpful for people who are looking to move into a new role right now, but it's always, at that level, it's always about networking. I mean, if there's a role to which someone aspires, and they should be in a position really networked in well enough to know that role might become available before it happens. Everything's about connections. All of our business, we do get inquiries, we do get companies come to us, say, can you help us with the role? But generally speaking, it's because we know someone there, or we've dealt with them before, or we've placed someone in the relevant company. So networking conquers everything. Aside from that, I mean, going back to those 3 or 4 roles that have become available, or of where the person's been let go or left or whatever. If you can't be directly networked in, then it sounds ridiculously cheesy, but LinkedIn is still an enormously valuable resource in terms of changing jobs. So you can, if you don't know the person that you need to know, the person who's hiring for that role, tracking them down on LinkedIn, commenting on some of their posts, that kind of thing. It sounds simplistic, but sure. At that level, people aren't just going to advertise a job, get 200 applicants to pick the best one. They're either going to go through an executive search process, or they're already got a good idea, or they'll have a succession plan. And realistically, at chief exec level, CFO level, there'll be some sort of succession plan in place, and your job as a prospective applicant is to get your name into that process, even though they've already got some kind of ideas of where they want to go. I mean, one of the interesting things for me when you get to a senior level, in, let's say, for the sake of argument, offline casinos. I'm not thinking of anybody in particular.
Mhm.
There's a if you look at either of the bigger companies, for example, a rank have just had a change of MD. The party company with the previous woman about 2 months ago, and have the new guy in place. In those situations, sorry, shut that door. In those situations, it's do you want to bring in an industry specialist, or do you want to go external and bring someone in with a whole different skill set? There isn't a correct answer, I don't think.
Mm.
If you go with someone experienced, there's a bit of, if you do what you've always done, you'll get what you always got. But at the same time, there's less of a learning curve. But do you want to bring on the baggage of people who already know most of how to do it, or do you want to bring in a generalist who has wide experience, is adaptable, and can apply things they've learned in different sectors to the casino sector or bingo sector, or whichever part it is? Those decisions are difficult. But it's all stuff that should be in your mind if you're the executive looking for a change. It's an awful lot of this. You'll read 1,000 LinkedIn posts from people who've unsuccessfully been looking for a job, and they'll kind of say, "Well, I've applied for 1,000 jobs, applied for 500 jobs, and haven't got anywhere." The way to get the job that you want is to know the person you're hiring already. Easier said than done, but in a smallish sector like gambling, all the conferences, all the networking events, all the rest of it, there's ample opportunity to meet these people, and that's how it's done.
And so obviously, attending things like ICE 2024 would be a great thing to do.
Yep.
Big thank you to Clarion, happy sponsors.
I see what you did there. That was so slick. So slick.
The whole thing was a setup for this job.
He's a pro.
So obviously things like that, like you said, there's plenty of opportunity to meet as many people as you want in the industry, and so much of the business happens at like 2 a.m. at some bar,
absolutely,
whatever, during those conferences. But who within, because obviously if it's is it like people on the board? Is it people around the board? Like, who would you rate? Like, I know it's a very blunt question because the right answer is it depends, but like, is there a general kind of direction to look at for this? Is it the recruiters themselves? Is it the board? Is it the non-execs? Is it, what would you feel would be the right pitch?
The person who you'd be working for, in my experience, and I've always think the best way to put it is, in these situations, it's not about how much they're going to pay you or how difficult it is to get you to move from your existing business. The key thing is the person who makes the decisions. What is it makes their life easier? What is it when they go to bed at night that bothers them about the business in this particular sector, whether it's finance or ops or whatever? And what's the easiest way to solve it? When you're in a relatively large organisation, and if you're going to be working directly for the CEO, then to a certain extent, in many cases, the kind of pay brackets don't matter as much. The kind of rules that exist for everyone, none of that's important as solving a CEO's problem, whatever that might be. And I think that kind of does get misunderstood a little bit. There's these processes are both more complex but fundamentally simpler than they look from the outside. If you can make their life easier, then you've got a pretty decent chance. And in terms of the kind of networking, I think at this level, HR teams are involved, but if the CEO already knows someone to think they can do the job, then they're going to get a leg up. Again, if this process goes through a recruitment agent, then I suppose part of the purpose of using an agent is to take away the kind of personal biases. But even then, we send a long list of 10, short list of 3. Whichever person has had a productive conversation about the business with the decision maker at an event at 2 a.m, at least you're something of a known quantity, and that, assuming you make a good impression, that can only help.
Yeah, okay, that makes, look, because it's so much of it's about like any type of hire, like even more junior stuff. It's, you tend to hire people like you, or so if you've met somebody, you've got a relationship, or they come really highly recommended, that carries a lot of weight, because it's such a, ultimately, like, we can apply as much HR science to this as you want, but realistically, it's like, can I work with this person?
Yeah, absolutely.
And like you said, and I think it's a very good point of, and are they going to solve today's problems for me and tomorrow's problems?
And there are genuinely, it's my view, and has been for a long time, that there are people, most people have a job. Some people are good at some jobs and not so good at other jobs, but there are fundamentally people who are just good at work, just being able to deliver, doing what they say they'll do, whatever it is, delivering on expectations, not forgetting they've been asked to do something, and just because the person who asked was forgotten. And I genuinely think that specific skills are very important. But once you get to a senior level, you're doing a bit of everything anyway. And we know one or two people over the years who we've either placed or we've been kind of, this is on the other side, we've been kind of warned a little bit about who maybe just aren't quite what you want. In terms of, are they reliable? Do they do what they say? Are they a toxic influence in the workplace? Generally, and I think it is very difficult to assess that during an interview process, but it's really easy to assess either end of that because somebody's worked with them, or because you've met them, or because they've spent the time to get to know you a little bit.
Which is why, I'm such a believer in. I know it's in a way it's quite hard with references. I think you see, because so I think the challenge this industry has is that if you're looking for somebody with industry experience, you're fishing in quite a small pool, relatively speaking, compared to just like general e-commerce or retail or something like that. And when you look at a lot of CVs, you do see the kind of the 18 months wonder, where like they can bash out a good 12 months just on muscle memory, and copying and pasting whatever they've previously done. And then there's 6 months of freestyling it where they get exposed, and then they're off again.
Yep.
So there is, and you see, particularly in the smaller islands and stuff, you do see a lot of that kind of just copying and pasting it effectively.
Yeah.
How, like, from a hiring perspective, and obviously with the C-level stuff, I'm sure it's a lot more in depth. Like, how would you go about vetting somebody on a reference type basis? Like, what's how involved is that?
And we kind of pride ourselves on the idea that there's pretty much no one in the industry we believe that we couldn't get a backdoor reference on with a phone call. We don't know everybody, but we know enough people that everybody knows someone who we know. If that makes sense, I think so. Yeah. The extent to which we'd go down that route, it depends on the job, depends on the employer, depends on what they want. In some cases they'd prefer just pick out, send a long list of people who can do the job, and they'll make all the decisions. But there have been situations where people would, they'll ask, backdoor's the wrong word, but our unofficial expertise or unofficial referencing is something they want to take advantage of. Basically, don't send us any idiots.
Which makes sense, because as somebody who's been a boss and I've given lots of references. There's definitely a few people where I probably shouldn't give a reference. Like legally, I don't even know where I stand if I give a negative reference.
Yeah,
so
I believe we discussed this in the last episode as well, Fintan. My bad reference experience.
Oh yeah,
I remember one of those. Yeah. I mean, generally speaking, most of the bigger companies officially will just give a Grayman's reference, which is worked from this date to that date.
This was the job title.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and would or would not re-employ, which not everyone sends that. That's a reference process, but the valuable one is the other reference process, is a quiet phone call that's not being recorded. The truth is most people are good at what they do, and what you mentioned about the kind of 18-month wonder, that is interesting. There's I might tell you offline, but there's someone I'm certain is going to get a role with a background like that for a major operator, and I'm pretty certain they'll get the role, and I'm absolutely certain they won't be there in 18 months. It's not through us, it's nothing to do with us, but it's one of those things where I've seen it a few times before with an individual. Truth be told, if they'll fill a gap, it'll probably work out, but 18 months later, they'll be gone. For precisely that reason. It's, as I say, most people are good at most jobs. Fundamentally, that's why they've been kept on. It's an increasingly tough world at the moment, as with redundancies and scaling down of operations and so on. So there isn't really room for people who don't perform anymore. You wouldn't think, but there's for all the fact it's a small pool, it's still tens of thousands of people we're talking about, and there's a variety and a range.
That's a very good point. Okay, so I'm on a sabbatical. How should I maximize my sabbatical time? What would you recommend I should do?
Stare out the window, look at the trees. That's what I do when I'm not working. it's funny. I mean, the whole work-life balance thing.
It's nonsense. It's a lie. It's a lie. There's no such thing. Surely.
it
Can't be balanced. It has
the
to be
older
imbalanced.
Neither of us have got a job, or none of the three of us have got a formal job at the moment. So it's I'm self-employed.
Mavericks.
You're taking it easy, and John's doing John's thing. So,
Classic lone wolf.
There you go.
So
the older I get, the more people of my age group kind of offer it. We'd all probably love to retire if we could. Not in a position to at the moment, and kind of got a business to run with my partner who's a bit younger than me. Probably wouldn't appreciate me just knocking off. But the concept of trying to do what makes you happy is kind of trumps the idea of trying to accumulate the maximum amount of wealth, like kind of Smaug the dragon sat on his pile of gold. I am seeing more and more people looking for part-time solutions, or you call it part-time job or call it consultancy work, or just thinking of kind of downshifting, which makes a lot of sense to me. I mean, what I do, I'm broadly full-time between the recruitment side and the kind of casino consultancy side that I do. But at the same time, I now appreciate, if I had the choice between working full-time and getting paid accordingly, or working about half the time, then I'm it's a tougher and tougher decision as I get older, just because there's more to life than working. At the moment, I really enjoy what I do.
But you put in the hard yards to also appreciate that as well, right? So it's kind of, it's like if you look at over time, it's, lots of late nights at 5 a.m. listening to aggro punters, right?
Yeah. Blimey, those are the days. It's
good times.
I think the kind of balance is important, but at the same time, most of the people we're placing are kind of moving their way up, so they're younger than me, hungrier than me, and they're looking to get their whatever the next position might be, get 3 or 4 years in that, and work their way towards the sea level, which tough to get to. I do wonder sometimes whether people fully understand the sacrifices that have to be made. In any kind of company of scale, once you get you'll see plenty of young people. You look on the kind of job pages on Reddit, which I do from time to time. It's all about, well, in 15 years' time, I should be in the C-suite and I'm earning the equivalent in today's money of 100, 150 grand or more in a bigger company. And I do wonder sometimes if they realise just what those jobs are like. It's not you get the job, you earn the money, life's great. It's you'll know yourself. It can be an all-consuming thing.
Oh, you're always on. Like there's no days off. There might be a day off, but it's not like, oh, it's the weekend, let's go do stuff.
Yeah. To be fair, though, there are some jobs where you have that sacrifice where the job is almost it's I was going to say a lifestyle choice. It's a life choice, not just a job choice. And actually, publishing is exactly like that. Like I remember at the ripe old age of 24 years old, I remember sitting around one weekend and I ended up phoning up a friend and just asking him what people do on a Saturday. Because it was the first weekend since I was 15 that I hadn't worked. Or just finished a deadline and was there for a corpse for the weekend. And it's like, people are always like, oh yeah, publishing sounds really great. And you get to travel and you do this, that and the other. Yeah. I managed to miss the first 5 of my older son's birthdays because it coincided with G2E Asia.
That's right.
Yeah.
Oh, the glamour.
Well, yeah, and I mean, then you combine that with, particularly at a senior role, you have to make some extremely difficult decisions, and by definition, you have to upset a lot of people. I've had to let people go in the past in my operational days, and if they've done something stupid or if they're just, frankly, an arsehole, then I don't find it particularly difficult. If they think they're doing a great job, but you recognise that they're not, and you have to have that conversation, that's not it's a horrible experience. I'm sure you've had to do it yourself, Fintan. Yeah, and that and worse. And that, as I say, I do sometimes wonder when you see people working their way up the ladder, aiming at that at all costs, and if they don't make it to that level, then they're a failure. I don't see it that way at all anymore, having seen what it's like. I just wouldn't want to do that.
It's probably the worst. So there's 2 scenarios. If it's if it's clearly a performance thing, that's one thing, and there's a process for that. But where it's like the business is struggling and we need to cut costs, so it's like you're doing a great job, we just can't afford you.
Yep,
that's probably the worst one.
Yeah.
and then like, oh my god, they've got kids and a mortgage and everything. So there's always that's never that's. But even the arsehole ones where it's like a clear cut case, I still hate. Like, you still feel sick. Like, it's not a pleasant conversation or something. I think if you enjoy it, you definitely shouldn't be doing it.
Yes.
Has a company ever come to you, Paul? Has a company ever come to you where they've had to let people go? And has a company ever come to you to say, look, we've got these good people. Can you find somewhere for them? Because something that sort of struck me, it's a bizarre parallel maybe, but in football, it's like the teams that seem to do well for a longer time are the teams that tend to be run by clubs who pay attention to the types of people they're bringing in, and they recruit a character.
Right.
Which, in my opinion, is where Manchester United have been going wrong the last several years. They never actually replaced Roy Keane. But that's by the by. But the point is, and I'm not speaking as a Manchester United supporter, but the point is that you know, the character thing it's like super important. It's become recognised as being super important now. It's one of them, because like you can teach somebody skills, but character, like it's in the wood sort of thing.
Yeah.
And with something, you know, football, everybody knows some family whose kid's been signed by some club. And when I say some kid, I mean like 6, 7, 8, 9, 10-year-old. And they gradually get jettisoned until they hit sort of 16. And then almost all of them are told to fuck off. And until the last couple of years, they were given zero support by the clubs. It was just, okay, bye. You've been living for this. Bye. Unlucky.
Yeah.
And given zero support. And I think that's shameful. You know, if you look at people who leave the army and struggle in day-to-day life, people who leave prison, professional athletes who have to retire, it's really difficult when you have a rigorous schedule and it's taken away. Psychologically, it's really difficult.
Yeah.
In the casino industry, you have an antisocial and difficult schedule very often, especially as you're working up. And you know, to sort of to be doing that and make those sacrifices and be jettisoned, it'd be shit. I mean, no more shit than getting jettisoned from any other job, but a difficult thing to adjust to. And so, you know, do businesses come to you and say, we'd like to give these guys some support because they're not arseholes?
Well, the answer is no. It's never happened to
Bastards.
us. I mean, well, and they not from a corporate point of view. I mean, obviously, until the day that they make the move, you know, close the casino or have a headcount reduction, they're never going to talk to anyone because it's such a sensitive subject, and you know, they're going to guard that information quite closely. But there have been a bunch of casino closures recently. I mean, you know, Claremont opened and closed after 6 weeks. Crockford's have gone. The Ritz has gone. Maxim's Palace Gate's gone. Genting closed 3 sites at once recently. Bristol, Torquay, and Southport. So
Shit, didn't know Torquay had closed.
I believe so. Yeah. It was a weird site anyway.
It's a very strange place.
From a London point of view, it really is. So from a London point of view, it's not as unpleasant because there's, you know, at the time these places closed, there were other sites that were open, and most of them needed more gaming staff. I think they were able to certainly the gaming staff side was relatively comfortable. Having said that, there's a ton of other professionals who've been working in these sites for years who found themselves out in the cold. Provincially, it's more difficult because there are no other casinos in Torquay, so what are you going to do? You're either moving house or changing sector. What you do find on the positive side is you'll see people from the companies that have had to let people go out on LinkedIn and say, look, you know, someone will just nominate their favourites. You know, Dave's available for work, he's great, give him a job. Some of them are a bit more expansive with it, you know, noting there's been a bunch of companies within and without the gaming sector who will say, you know, due to closure, all these people are available, and, you know, kind of try and get some publicity around that. But I guess these situations are so difficult and so challenging for everybody. It may not be front of mind trying to. You know, they're probably more concerned with trying to run what's left of the business than they are with trying to place all the other people. We've certainly offered. I mean, I know when which is, I guess it was when the Ritz closed, we went quite public about it, saying, look, if there's people looking for roles, we know all the people who might want to employ you, we can try and help, without any kind of fees, just trying to help people out, because it will come back in kind of karmic terms. But it's I think in casino terms, people just scatter quite a bit. They've either got something else lined up quickly within the industry because they all talk to each other, or in some cases it's just such a relief. Well, it kind of depends. If you're in London at the top end, some of them are making so much in tips that they'll never see that kind of income again. Outside of the industry, that is difficult. But provincially, I think they just scatter a lot of the time. They'll just find something else. You might have been a dealer for 3 years, but in some cases that it's still kind of a job to people. It's just something they're doing while they're waiting for whatever else to come through. So you're out of casinos. Pay wise, if you're working in a casino in Torquay, then you can get a bar job the next day that pays pretty much the same, or £1 an hour less, and you don't have to work late nights anymore. So it's not. It may not feel like as big a deal as it would do for someone in a regular job, I guess.
I lived in Torquay for a bit. It was very interesting. I lived on the second roughest street in Torquay. And it was so rated because it was opposite the roughest street, and it was quite funny. But I'm not dissing Liverpool when I say this. I met more people from Liverpool in Torquay than I've ever met in Liverpool.
Really?
It was very, very
Why?
peculiar. I don't know. I really don't know. But they'd sort of taken on this Devonian thing, right? And this is a story from a chap that I was working with. But he was apparently walking down the street. So there's a term in Devon, I think it might be used in Cornwall as well, which is grockle. Grockle means incomer, blow-in, tourist, right? And he was walking down the street, and this chap just barges into him, basically. And then bloke's, oh, sorry, in a very English, oh, sorry, I didn't mean for you to bump into me. And apparently the bloke just glared at him and just went, fucking grockle. Yeah, I think you might have missed the point of that. Term there,
Yeah.
Chief. But no,
For
I
our
did.
American listeners, he did that in a Liverpool accent.
Oh yeah. Sorry. The joke is that the gentleman from Liverpool was in fact the grockle, and the chap I know was born and bred in Devon. But it was a very very strange place to live. But interestingly, you mentioned good old Dave there, and Dave in Torquay is the guy that gave me the bad reference that Fintan and I discussed last episode. So Dave is a douche,
Tosser.
and I hope he hasn't got a job. I hope he's got hemorrhoids, really bad ones.
Torquay feeds into my ultimate casino nerd story that I think there's about 125 or so casinos in the UK. Torquay was one of the last ones I visited. I've been to them all.
Really?
It's desperatally sad.
Feels like a Guinness Book of Records thing, though.
Well,
I don't think it's going to be a lot of competition, Paul.
No, it's the Guinness Book of Nerd Records. There was even to the extent there was a casino in Glasgow, which is closed now, which was called the Corinthian Club on the first floor of a kind of multi-bar place.
That wasn't that a little private. Is that the one that was a little private place?
G1.
Thank you.
Yeah. It was owned by a hospitality company called G1. So they eventually moved it downstairs in the basement, and I felt, because by that time I had the full house, I've been to all of them, and I felt the fact that it had relocated, even though it had only gone down 2 floors, meant I no longer could say I've been to them all, so I had to go back to Glasgow just to visit it again. Sad case.
So just on the Guinness Book of Records, there was a couple last year who did a thing where they placed a bet in every casino in Las Vegas within 24 hours.
Wow, that's a
something like
job.
That.
Yeah.
And they got themselves into the Guinness Book of Records. So I think if you can clearly document for the Guinness Book of Records that you visited every casino in the UK, British Isles, whatever the correct definition is, and put a time on it, then you're creating that. Then you're the first one in the record books, and then somebody else will come along and try and beat your time. I think we could start something here.
Yeah, I mean, some of them I'm not in a rush to go back to.
Well, no, you've already done it. As long as you've got photo evidence or something for the.
What's your favourite then? What's your favourite one? And not that you need to pick favourites, but which one?
Well, I used to.
You know what the next question is, right?
I do. Well, I've got a diplomatic answer to that because it's been refurbed. The shittiest one, in my view, used to be Genting Luton. It was not good, but it looks lovely now. I've been back recently, and it's had a much needed and very well delivered makeover.
But it probably sticks out like a sore thumb in Luton then.
Well, it's a.
I'm just kidding, Luton.
It was horrible. Favourite casino? I'd be tempted to say Victoria Gate Casino in Leeds, partly because myself and a colleague, Debbie, wrote the licence application and babied it through for about 7 years until it opened. But that's slightly self-interested. Locally, I mean, if we're going to punt, we'll punt in the Hippodrome, generally speaking, because obviously it's fantastic. Although it's a bit busy. And they've jacked the minimums up high enough that...
What a criticism. There's a lot of people in there, though. I like my casinos dead.
I'm old. I don't like people generally. But if I was a single man, the place to be is the Hippodrome when they kick out the Magic Mike show. We've been there a couple of times watching NFL, and 300 women who've been watching strippers all hopped up on Chardonnay is quite a sight to behold. Friends of mine have kind of deliberately gone back at the same time, day after day. It's genuinely scary at times.
Paul, listen, right? Have you been to see Magic Mike?
I haven't, no.
Right.
It's not really
you might be hanging around outside when it kicks out. Might be hanging around when it kicks out. Do you know the Channing Tatum movie? Do you know the Channing Tatum movie, Fintan? It's about male strippers.
Oh, okay. It's a strip show. All right.
It's a male review.
but they've done it. They've done it in the Atcham Theatre, right? Which is a beautiful little theatre which seats, I think it's 300 people. You got a balcony and all of this, and so I kept Simon and Ian actually kept saying you really should come and see the show.
There's a strip show in the casino.
No, it's in a separate theatre. Separate little self-contained theatre where Prince once played. Anyway, right?
He didn't get his bits out though. Okay.
I don't know. I wasn't there. Afterwards, they're like, "Oh yeah, Prince was great the other night," and I'm like, "I'm sorry, what?" "Oh yeah, Prince was amazing." I'm like, "Prince played here?" "Yeah, the other night it was fucking amazing." I'm like, "Just a quick question. Why didn't you tell me?" And they're like, "Didn't know you like Prince." Like, who the fuck doesn't like Prince? Who would turn down seeing Prince in a 300-seat fucking theatre? Nobody. Oh, but anyway, right? So, Magic Mike, right? Ian and Simon Thomas were like, "Oh, you just come and see it. You know, something for everybody in the show." They might not have actually said that part. They said, "Come and see it. It's really, really slick. It's really, really well done." And so I was in London for some other stuff, and I had it's going to sound fucking terrible. This is, but I'll crack on with it anyway. And I was with Lorna, my stepdaughter, and the graphic designer who does all of our visuals for the podcast, right?
And has done a bunch of work for us and done a great job as well.
Oh, has she? Oh, that's great.
Yeah, she's been fantastic.
Cheers, terrific. We were going to see Pearl Jam and Pixies in Hyde Park. And so the night before, I just got back from, I think it might have been the iGaming show in Amsterdam. So early July. And I'm like, well, we could go and see that. So I said, all right, if you really want me to go, I'll have a couple of tickets. And so he gave us a couple of tickets, and we were right at the front, right? Rather predictably, I was the only bloke in the room, which was quite interesting. The only other time I've really experienced that was I saw Robbie Williams on his first solo tour. And I was wise enough that when he came on stage, I turned around to face the crowd because I was in the second row. Turned around to face the crowd just for the experience of 2,000 women lunging towards me, which, you know, it was fun for a moment, but I wouldn't want it every night. Yeah, I mean, it just gets tiring, Paul, frankly. So anyway, right. So we're in the theatre, and it starts off like the shittest strip show you've ever seen in your life. Like a 1980s, just kind of sexist, unpleasant, really in your face, shit music, shit dancing, shit everything to get you set up for disappointment, because then it completely changes direction, right? And so it starts off with this direction, does not change direction. I'm not sure that's legal. So, but it starts off with this male presenter who's just a complete knob. And of course, he sees me in the audience, doesn't he?
Of course,
and he then assumes that Lorna,
listening in the glitter bar.
Lorna is like, so what? Lorna would have been 26 at this point, right? 25 or 26, and he assumes that this woman who is half my age is quite clearly my significant other. Which, anybody that's met Lorna, no. I mean, she's like a daughter to me. And there's nothing in our body, there's nothing other than, oh, look, there's a bloke with a woman, therefore. And he just came out with, honestly, I've never seen Lorna blush so much. I'm not going to repeat what he said in front of this huge crowd of women. And all the women are like looking at me like, good on you, good coming with your missus. Anyway, so we watched the show and it was excellent. It's really, really good. Because the way it's staged, they've utilised the whole of the theatre. So everybody is close to the action. Like, even though you've got your really good right front of the stage seats, the staging's so clever. It's really beautifully done. And lots of pretty much naked men cavorting. So if you dig that kind of thing, yeah, great. But when we got out, luckily there weren't loads of Paul's friends outside waiting. Because they'd have been really disappointed if they were, oh, the ladies are coming, there's me. Oh. All right, lads. But the woman said outside, oh, was your girlfriend, was she embarrassed? I'm like, it's my stepdaughter. And she's like, and I suddenly thought, actually, yeah, I have just taken my stepdaughter to watch strippers, haven't I? Fuck. It is stupid. What a knobhead. But I was just like, they'd said it's really cleverly done. It's really, so I wanted to see how well done it was.
I was here for the staging.
Exactly. I was just there for the features.
Is that what they call them?
Oh dear, John, the naivety.
I know, right?
It seems to be immensely successful, though. It seems like it sells out. 2 shows a night. I think. I think maybe 3 at the weekends. But
it's very good. I was super impressed. Yeah. And I don't think anybody leaves it feeling like they haven't got their money's worth. Because like I said, because you've got shit going on all over the room. Everybody is close to the action at various points, and it's. Yeah, I think they've done something really, really unique. It's very impressive. So, sorry.
I'll have to add it to my list of shows to see in London during ICE.
Well, you're in London during ICE.
I am. Paul, obviously, long-term listeners know that when you're not doing superhero recruitment stuff, you're doing superhero casino consultancy stuff.
Yeah.
And I know I saw a couple of posts and stuff recently, or comments and stuff you've left on a few bits and pieces. And the last time you were on as well, we touched on Vegas. What's the crack with Vegas? What's going on in Vegas? Well,
I mean, the current hot topic is the Grand Prix, which is back in November.
Yes.
I mean, the revenue figures for the casinos are spectacular. I think it was a second record month of all time. I think November was.
Really?
But there's a flip side of that, and obviously the Grand Prix caused a lot of disruption. We were out in Vegas like 2 weeks before the Grand Prix, and it was a bit of a mess then. If you wanted to see the Bellagio fountains, which is obviously a kind of touchstone for a lot of tourists, you were out of luck from the Strip. You had to go into the Bellagio and look out because they were masked by temporary seating structure and so on. So it created a huge amount of disruption. Getting around anywhere in a taxi 2 weeks before the race was a lot more challenging than it normally would be. And there's been a big old backlash from lots of, I guess, off-strip businesses who've, I think they're putting together a class action lawsuit. Or there's talk of it because they've done nothing wrong, and all of a sudden their businesses were devastated in November because people couldn't get to them. If you're in the wrong location, particularly on the street that's just back of the Strip, I think it's Koval, It was just impassable, and so it's caused a huge amount of drama. But my view is easy for me to say. I don't have a business that's been devastated by it, but those are the sort of things that make Vegas what Vegas is. If you started now and picked a big empty bit of desert and said, I know what I'll do, I'll put in 20 $10 billion hotels and a ton of entertainment and top-end restaurants and gaming and so on, people would think you're absolutely insane. That the only reason Vegas still exists is because it is something different and spectacular. And you've got the NFL team, you've got the Sphere that's just opened, which looks amazing. Things like Formula One, Super Bowl coming in February. Those are the things that make Vegas Vegas and make it totally unique. And I think I appreciate the business owners who've been devastated, or who've had, I say devastated, they've had a very, very difficult month, and these things are on pretty narrow margins for the most part. But if you don't have events like that, it just becomes a big city in the middle of a shitty desert that's stinking hot in the summer, and anyone can gamble anywhere these days. So I can kind of see their argument, but I think you have to put these events on. But the other thing that struck me this visit was, and we kind of go once or twice a year, usually timed with G2E, it's just how now we've talked before about how expensive everything is out there, it's exponentially worse than it was 3 years ago, but also how the level of quality's declined. At the very top end, if you're paying crazy money, then you're going to get absolutely superb service. But I'm finding increasingly at the kind of middle end, for example, hotels like Planet Hollywood or Link, or I'm trying to split them across operators, or MGM Grand, there's machines not working. There's kind of crap lying around. All the little things that you would normally expect to get for the price you pay, even for the mid-end experiences, you're not quite getting anymore. And you do wonder if someday, eventually, yes, they're still locking in record revenues, and that's across VIP through to grind action. You wonder if eventually the collective visiting population is going to look at it and say, hang on a minute, I'm paying super premium prices for an average product. I saw someone else's podcast the other day talking about when I'm talking premium pricing, I'm talking ridiculous pricing. The one thing I will now never forget in Vegas was Sarah and I went off to see Adele, which was, that's not cheap in itself, but we went for a drink beforehand. 2 double gin and tonics at a standard bar in I'll name and shame, in Caesar's Palace. So 2 gin and tonics with tax and tip, $92. That's serious, and you can buy 3 litres of the same gin in a shop for that. And eventually there'll come a point when people are just the kind of emperor's new clothes are going to get seen through. I think that having said that, they keep pushing things and they keep making more money. So, and I know I said this to someone else. I wrote a piece about this about 7 years ago, maybe a little bit longer, and said the prices are ridiculous. It's got to stop. This was talking about the price of gaming in particular. And it's got to stop somewhere. And if Mr. Vegas had agreed with me then, they'd have missed out on billions. They're just, however far they seem to push it, people keep coming.
I'm still struggling with the gin and tonics.
It's I like my first G2E was when was it? Just before COVID. And myself and a colleague were there, and it was like our joke was like every time we open our wallet, it's $50.
Yep,
like
absolutely, yeah.
You're just buying coffees or something, like just it's minimum $50. Yeah, was kind of the running joke, and that was 5 years ago.
But it didn't used to be that way.
Specifically on the Strip, but
I mean, I started going there 17, 18 years ago. Definitely. I mean, the thing about the businesses off Strip, or the businesses hit by Formula One, I mean, the problem is that it was pitched as this is going to be a great thing for everybody. And those businesses, even though there's not stacks of them, we're still talking tens of millions. We are talking about a serious amount of money because the disruption in the sort of production process went on and on in an area where the traffic's shit anyway.
Absolutely.
But they've made a commitment. I mean, I don't doubt that it's going to be better next year. I do think that the appointment of I can't remember the lady's name. They have a title. Some American cities have somebody who runs the city. They're like an operations manager for a city. They've employed a former one of those as the head of the Formula One Vegas operation now. And I think that could be quite a smart move. But do you know where that was reported? Casino?
It was
casino.org.
Yeah, they do a good job.
It's crazy. Blows my fucking mind.
They had an excellent news section. But from an F1 perspective, the actual race was fantastic. Like the way they designed the track, it's a street circuit with overtaking. So apart from the bit of fuss in the quad where one of the Ferraris got damaged, it was actually a great race.
Right.
And it's the only track that Formula One actually owns, so they're not going to get rid of it.
Right.
So this is happening every year for the foreseeable future.
The timing is a bit of a challenge as well, isn't it? Because they wanted it to be at night, because obviously that gives you the best visuals from the on-car cameras, but that doesn't necessarily tie in all that well with the peak market viewing times. But what you're going to do, you can't make it dark when it doesn't want to be dark.
Well, they want to grow the American market, so that's a big part of it too. But the dome was amazing, the sphere thing. That's just phenomenal.
Yeah, but I mean, the one of the people I follow in Vegas, a guy called Scott Rubin, who runs Vital Vegas, he included the sphere on the top 10 businesses likely to go bankrupt in the next 2 years, because the prices there are ludicrous.
The parking prices.
I know, yeah, $75 wasn't it? I think.
That's for for non-validated. That's like, there's nobody's parking it for you. That's like parking it yourself. What? I'd imagine that in a gin and tonic. That's the best part of 200 quid.
Well, then by the time you pay another 600 for your U2 tickets, you're into $1,000. Then with dinner to pay. We didn't get in there because couldn't get tickets for U2, and they have a daytime show, which is basically a film that takes advantage of the internal screen, and again there was nothing available for that either. But up close or from your hotel from a distance, it's staggering at night particularly. It's a good reason to use the monorail, which we haven't used for years, because it's all the monorail stops are so far back from the strip or from the hotels that you might as well walk or get a cab anyway. But the monorail goes around the sphere, and that's a spectacular trip at night. It's but yeah, you just cannot get your head around how ridiculous the whole structure is. But it doesn't. I mean, I don't think the future's rosy for whoever financed it originally. I mean, it's still going to be there because it'll generate revenue, but I don't think you're going to get that capital back. And then you've got they insist on calling it the Fountain Bleu, the Fontaine Bleu, which opened recently. That looks absolutely spectacular as well, but also is in a questionable location. And as I understand it, judging by the number of executives who've left, which is quite a considerable number, I don't think it's smooth sailing there either. For all the fact Vegas are making record money, you've still got to be in the right place.
That executive churn at Fontainebleau is really interesting, and it's very rarely a good sign. But I think it's a shame that the changes at the north end of the strip weren't slightly closer together. Because I don't think there's anything wrong with SLS, except the timing, and the Strat. The refurb and all of that of the Strat. Actually, what they've done is they've recognised their customers better, arguably. Yeah. So that's probably going to thrive. Be very, very surprised if it doesn't. There's a really solid place in the market for that. But there are some quite. Genting. There's Fontainebleau. There's the outdoor concert venue up there. There's loads of stuff up the north end of the strip. But if it was all a bit more coordinated, it could have been a really fabulous sort of 5-year project or something. Spread it over 10 years, and it's like, but is it? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. The Resorts World, the Genting site, is unbelievably spectacular. I had the most expensive meal I've ever had in my life there, and it wasn't particularly. It didn't look upscale, and of course, didn't really check the prices because you assume it'd be affordable. Found out at the end that it wasn't really, but the scale of it, the amount of money they spent on it to make it look great is amazing. But exactly as you say, it still feels a bit. And we were the Fontainebleau opened after we were there, and Resorts was still felt a bit isolated. There's a really shitty kind of secondary retail parade directly opposite where. With a El Gordo taco, it looks like you might get a taco, you might get stabbed. And there's all sorts of unsavoury.
I do like those places.
Well, yeah, so do I. But yeah,
They do the best tacos.
yeah. Only in daylight though. That's a non after dark situation. And you got the Peppermill up there, which is one of our favourite kind of places. But it's still it's exactly as you say. It doesn't feel like it's not been planned. It doesn't feel like an area or a precinct. It just feels like some interesting attractions, if you want to use that word.
You make a good point though, Paul. You make a good point. It's not linked as well as the rest of the strip. The crosswalks aren't there. Yeah. None of that shit's there, and actually, that's a big miss. It's a really big miss. I hadn't thought of it in that respect.
And they're a bit too far apart as well. You know, the walk from Resorts World to anywhere is significant. And again, at night time, it's not particularly comfortable. And you got the Win up there as well, which is a good old walk from the strip to get into the Encore. Certainly, that's not a particularly comfortable walk. And it's not as well connected. It all feels a bit isolated. We'll go up there once per trip, if that, to see something new, a new restaurant at one of those hotels or whatever. We'll go and see the Fontainebleau next time, I'm sure. But it feels like it'll be a taxi in and a taxi out, rather than go up there for a wander about and go into a few different spots like you would mid-strip or at the MGM Grand End, the South End. Still good fun, but we now split our time between the strip and getting off strip. We'll normally stay at either Red Rock or in future Durango for half the time, just because it's a bit less hectic and a hell of a lot cheaper. You know, even you get inured to paying $16 for a pint on the strip, and then you get to a normal place where the same pint will cost you $7 or $8. And that's in one of the more expensive off-strip spots. You can go to a dive bar and it'll be $5. You just forget that you're in a bit of a fantasy world on the strip, and it's a wallet hoover.
I didn't realise it was so beautiful, so different as you got further off strip.
It's just the strip really.
I wasn't kidding when I said when we had Seth Shaw on a couple of weeks before Christmas, I think. And I probably sound like I was blowing smoke up his ass, but I love downtown Grand because it's off Fremont Street. You know what I mean? It's like everything's really affordable, and they've got loads going on. But like I love Red Rock.
Yep.
I really do love Red Rock.
Yeah,
it is like it's a 4-star place, and it's a locals casino. It's like why? Yep. Why would you do this? But it's beautiful. One of the other things is Red Rock's part of like a little entertainment destination.
Yeah.
And it's got a cinema in it, which, you know, it's a nice thing to have. And because there's no cinema on the strip anymore.
That's right. Yeah, have to go down Town Square now.
Absolutely gutted. There used to be one just behind MGM. Just down the little alley to the side of it. It was great. Every time I went to G2E, I'd end up in that cinema watching some matinee of something. Not while G2E was on. Before G2E started, I'd go down to the cinema. I saw some crackers.
It was great. You could spend 3 hours drinking carbonated beverages in a nice, cool environment, and it doesn't cost you a fortune. You know, anything else you do, the moment you leave your hotel room, you're spending fortunes. But 2 or 3 hours in a cinema, you're pretty comfortable. It's $10. That's your lot. Thanks very much. But just going back to Red Rock up there.
Sorry.
Well, up at Red Rock, there's a downtown Summerlin directly opposite, and it's maybe 300 yards walk, which is almost an outlet mall, which there's kind of something there for everyone, restaurants and shops and all the rest of it. And the baseball stadium, the AAA baseball stadium, is directly across the road from Red Rock as well, which in the summer, ideally not in August or July or whatever, but you can go and watch basically the second tier of baseball. I'm a big baseball fan, so I'm happy as you like. $20 for a ticket and sit there and watch someone else run around.
It's going to change things. I think the sports team stuff is just because it goes back to your original point where the pricing's going up, quality is degrading for the mass market end of the spectrum. But by layering in the sports teams, and obviously the residencies and stuff have been a go-to thing, and now you got the Sphere, and so I think it feels like there's still more headroom on this before they need to recalibrate and adjust the pricing service or some pricing quality levels.
Yeah.
But there's also another strike potential.
Is that right?
That is
we
quite
were
interesting.
In the middle of the last one.
So they've
Yeah.
set a deadline for negotiations, which is, I'm going to try and run my dates right here. I think the deadline for negotiations is February the 2nd, which is right before the Super Bowl.
Right.
And it's basically not MGM, Caesars, or Wynn. So it's basically everybody else. And of course, they've set a precedent
Right.
with those three. So in theory, this should be smoother, but we are talking about smaller businesses as well. Plus, I mean, that the MGM, Caesars, and Wynn scenario, they were negotiating for about 8 months, I think. With this one, they basically said, look, we need to be sorted in 3 weeks. I mean, they've probably already had preliminary conversations, don't get me wrong, but
Yeah, sure.
there is no time at all between now and the Super Bowl. And in that week before the Super Bowl, the city's going to be crazy. So that's actually pretty interesting. So yeah, poor old Las Vegas. They're going to have to share the profits. Aww.
Well, the numbers are scary. The kind of, because they've been going for so long, and you look at the kind of earnings statements, and it's up 2% or down 3% or whatever. There's still the amounts of money are absolutely staggering, and there are plenty of people who work jobs in Vegas that elsewhere in the country or elsewhere in the world would be broadly minimum wage, and they're making the equivalent of $100,000 plus as kind of supervisors or dealers, or even wait. You go to a top end restaurant in Vegas, where it's traditional is the wrong word, but it's standard to tip 18-20%, and your meal's costing $250 a head before you start. So every table of four you're taken care of. There's a couple $100 in your pocket. They're making staggering amounts of money in some roles, but when you get to the housekeepers who are getting paid, starvation money almost, and being phased out to a certain extent, it's still a good example of where quality is being eroded. Is mid-tier hotels now, twice now, as we checked in, they've said, "Do you want housekeeping?" Now, as it happens, generally, I'm out quite late and can't be bothered with someone knocking on my door at 10 in the morning, so I say no. But for that now to be optional, and there's clearly a reason for that, to cut down on housekeeping costs. They'll couch it as environmentally friendly to save renewing the towels and so on. But it's the illusion of total quality while chipping away at everything that makes it quality and trying to hide it that starts to get a bit wearing sometimes.
Well, another great example, everybody's charging for parking again.
Yeah,
that's come full circle. But you know what I mean? Everybody's talking about $1 billion whatever months, $1 billion months and all that. That's not just made up of gaming. Those profits that those companies are seeing are made up from all sorts of cost cutting and cost restoring. But things like parking, all right, maybe it only adds 0.75%, but 0.75% of multiple billions of dollars is a lot of money.
Absolutely.
But it's the other thing. But that will go in another cycle again, because somebody, say a Win or somebody like that, will say, we've done away with the car parking charge, come see us. And it's a marketing drive, and then people will follow that again, and it'll swings and roundabouts, isn't it?
Yeah, and it is amazing how quickly and comprehensively Vegas reacts to change as well. I mean, 10 years ago, nightclubs were the big kind of money spinner. So every news site would have a big nightclub, and I think the Palms with I think it was Chaos. That's the one that went too far, spent too much on DJs, and lost. I think it was up to the hundreds of millions from memory. So now, the some sites have nightclubs, some don't. They've realised there's a limit to how big the market can get, but the speed they follow suit, and then if you become the outlier, it's a way to try and sell that. I saw the Durango station, which is the new off-strip one from the same people as Red Rock. They've opened without any shuffling machines. It's obviously a policy. I haven't seen them publicise it, but presumably the idea is you can say to the locals market as a whole, well, if you don't like playing with shuffling machine, come to us. I wouldn't do that myself. I just don't think there's enough people who care versus the number of hands you lose per hour. But it's another attempt to be interesting by being different, I guess, in a market where there's an awful lot of homogeneity. Is that a word? I think it is.
It is now.
Definitely.
Couldn't spell it, but
well, that's why I'm on this podcast.
I'm
just here
He's our
for
words
spelling.
guy. He's
It's one of those words where if I read it, I know what it means, but that might be the first time I've ever said it out loud. And
there's so many words that I've only ever read and never used in a sentence till John or my wife corrects my pronunciation, and my wife does it in such a disdainful, "What kind of peasant have I married?" kind of way.
But
It's special.
particularly funny though, Fintan, that the first time we had that conversation, the word was
what was the
hirsute.
word?
That's
Hirsute.
right. Hadn't a clue.
The irony.
I tend to bail out and generally not say it because I'm assuming I'm probably going to be using it wrong. But I obviously took a risk. It's paid off with homogeneity. Very pleased with that.
Brilliant.
Well, I've written it down just in case I need to spell it out.
Just to be sure. Just in case. So Paul, thanks so much for this. People can find you at grs-recruit.com.
It is a hyphen.
It is a hyphen, most certainly. I don't think anyone needs a sales pitch, but it's pretty clear what we do, and we're always up for new clients, and we're headed down to EAG. I'm not going tomorrow. I'm going Wednesday and Thursday, and obviously we'll be at ICE as well. I'm sure if the three of us are down there, we can catch up while we're there as well.
That would be fantastic. Brilliant. Thank you so much, Paul. Great to see you again. Great way to kick off 2024. Really appreciate it.
Alrighty, see you guys next time. Perhaps we'll see you at ICE.